Mark Wilson of Fast Company.
Can't see you. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how generative AI is changing design. I've been a design journalist now, in particular, for over a decade. And just earlier this year, I was reporting a feature at Nike. And you know, Nike, I don't know how much people have really followed the sort of Nike storyline, but they've lost the running category. They've been struggling a little bit. People have said that they just keep re-releasing like old retro shoes, and that's like really hurt the stock price. And so anyway, we're repping Nike here right now. But so I was talking to like probably 6 of their leading product innovators. They were talking to me about how they use all sorts of AI for all of these years and things, and then they said, well, actually, just come back to this back room. So we went into the design studio, and what they pulled up was a system they call Black Box. And it is literally like, a black box as in a plane crash, like you have the black box and there's secretive things in it. For them, it is their in-house AI system. And they can feed it all sorts of prompts, and what it generates is very Nike-ish. They basically walk away with a sculpture. Not quite a shoe, kind of like if you would imagine somebody sculpting a shoe. And then from that, they have a 3D file. They hand it to their designers, and they can use any software they want to take that sort of base 3D model into a true articulated shoe that they can then send to engineering. And within a day now, they can go from sort of concept to a provable quasi-prototype. But I was fascinated by that. Yeah. Because the shoe industry is really driven by like an 18-month product cycle. And I saw all these Nike designers very much embracing a technology that at the same time was probably trained on their archive, could probably challenge them creatively, and they were gung-ho for it. So I'm really interested to dig into the panel today. We're going to start. We have Lori from Gensler. You lead hospitality.
Yes.
We have Rotimi from Show Design, his own studio where you work on branding, you work on industrial design. Yeah. And we have Scott Wilson, founder of Minimal, also a Nike vet, so he may want to chime in on things I said. But where I really want to start is kind of a state of the union about how each of you is using generative AI in your practice today.
Right. Who goes first?
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go
Lori,
first.
go for
Sure,
it.
why not? Ladies first.
Jump in.
We are using it in really unique ways, especially in the beginning of our design process, even with a pitch. So why it's so great is because you're hearing, our clients want things so much faster now, or we want designer ideation before you even walk into the room. So this is helping us create ideas and thinking and really formulating elements before, and in a much more iterative process. So instead of doing 1 idea or 5 ideas, we're able to come up with 50 and then curate what we're creating for the story that we're going to be implementing.
Right. When you talk about those ideas, like what's production look like?
So
walk me through. I'm the client.
One of the most fun ones that we're doing right now is we like to talk about people. So we're talking about the people, and you're going to go stay at a hotel, and your experience might be different than mine. So let's take you through that day in the life of journey. Yeah. Instead of me using a Pinterest image of you or of me or something like that, we're actually now creating a woman, and we're saying, this is who she is. This is where she likes to shop. This is her fashion. This is her kids.
I gotta admit, I'm picturing like the 6-fingered person.
She's fabulous. She's so diverse, okay? So no, but we're actually now able to create somebody unique that's just from our vision for you and take her on that day in the life of. And so that's a very different way than when we used to pick a stock photo.
Yeah, right. You're creating a true archetype.
Yeah, and it's really exciting. So then that's just the beginning of our process, and just one way that we're using AI that's expanding our mind and letting us think creatively in a very different way. Like it's using a different muscle of our creativity, because we never used to think of her and her details in a way that we could actually create then her jewelry and her shoes.
Right.
So full taste, full generative human.
Yes, if I could just create her scent, I would be.
Rotimi, how about you?
Yeah, so we take a similar approach. We've been doing AI, using it for storytelling purposes. Obviously, so we do brand and product design. We do some UI, UX work as well. but it always comes down to story. So we're using it with some of our clients that are in the startup world, in the tech spaces. And a lot of times we have to create that vision for this project so that we can all rally behind an idea and then put resources behind to make it real. So we've really used it, especially in the conceptual storytelling, like how do we create an anchor, something that can be a common thread throughout the entire design process. And then sometimes it comes back in, so that's sort of early stage when we're talking about creating a deck, creating a presentation or pitch.
So literally like the storyboarding of this is the idea for my clients.
Right.
And essentially what takes a lot of the production work and sort of weight off of that part of the process.
Exactly, yeah. And then we use it back in sort of towards the end of the process when we're trying to maybe create an environment in which we can place the product in question in, or create a contextualization, right? Because so much of the storytelling that we do is like giving someone a vision of themselves using this product or interacting with it. And so sometimes you can't find the right imagery to do that. And especially for fast-moving projects where we're not bringing in teams to do photography and art directing, all of that, so that it can be very helpful in that sense.
Scott, how about you?
Fascinating. Well, I didn't know that about Nike, and it doesn't surprise me that they're that. Was that Aaron?
Was that Aaron?
Yeah, no, I know that they had an AI guy.
Wasn't Aaron, but no. Yeah. It's surprising about Nike. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say that at minimal, we're like 15 people, mostly designers, some engineers, and I think we're using AI more for the inputs to design, not so much the aesthetic design, because product is kind of a little bit more nuanced and functional. So, like you said, it doesn't even understand that we have 5 fingers. It's giving us 6. So how's it going to do ergonomics and some of the kind of more detail-oriented product design? But, for instance, we were working with a Norwegian early-stage humanoid company, baby company over there that we scraped like 95 million user comments around strollers and baby products in 2 weeks, right? So that's a lot of input that we can use to inform, make sure to validate where we're going is the right way. And we did use it for personas as well.
So wait, break down that sequence a little bit.
Yeah.
So you use AI to scrape like tons of user feedback and comments for the product.
Yeah, so our research partner here in town, we partnered with on the user research from Shanghai, Beijing. We did some on-the-ground research, but then prior to that, we did about a 2-week thing with them where they scraped 95 million comments online forums and everything. It's a trained, confidential, isolated model that they've trained. But yeah, it's amazing because when you used to think about user groups, maybe you get 100 and they're like, is that really that accurate? And then you think of medical trials that's up here. This is well beyond medical trials of like getting feedback. So.
And did that then, I guess, inform how you pursue the design?
Yeah, the brief and reframing the brief, and now there's some debate because research is saying something different than what maybe leadership wants. But so I think it's like, but how do you argue with 95 million, right? And plus on the ground research. So it's more about the inputs, like whether it's research, as a designer that works across all kinds of industries from medical to furniture to consumer products, you never know what's going to walk in the door. So for me, like I can get up to speed on a potential project or topic very quickly. Like it's like Cliff Notes. I mean, I'm dating myself, but back in high school we had Cliff Notes, right?
We're using it for that same reason. For
rapid research?
Rapid research. It's
Yeah.
helping everybody get up to speed very quickly. And of course, you're fact checking everything along the way, but it definitely helps give you a quick synopsis.
I love it, yeah. It's like my Friday night dog walks are like conversations now with AI. It's like the most positive relationship I have right now. It's like every oh yeah, it's like, I guess it is kind of like
audience.
her.
Want to plant that seed, not for anybody here, but for Scott.
Yeah.
Nice.
When you talk about using it for research, I mean, you really talk about that sort of like ChatGPT or sort of like Perplexity or one of those platforms that foundationally you're just like talking to it as a better Google.
yes, that's how I'm using it and
Yeah.
how our team,
Oh, yeah.
even our branding team actually opened my eyes up to it, because usually I'm so impressed, wow, the branding team knew everything so quickly, so deep. And then, yeah, they gave me a little insight. They're like, Lori, start.
No, we have a remote brand designer out in LA. She's in town this week, and we're working on this like purification system, which is using what the Earth does to purify itself, like proactively out in the space versus sucking things in and filtering it. And all of a sudden she's writing stuff, and I'm like, where's this coming from? You know, and I'm like, oh, she's using chat. And she's like, can I have a subscription? And I'm like, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
It's like, make my life easier.
It's also creating a really amazing platform because I have a great coworker, Rohaya, great coworker, Lisa, and maybe English is not their first language.
Yeah.
And they have the most amazing stories in their mind, and they're telling beautiful brand stories. And then this now gives them a platform to be able to say those stories in a more eloquent way that you couldn't have if English is not your first language.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, and we've in the surveys and the research section, we've definitely used it to help synthesize, large volumes of written response, right? To really, okay, what's the nugget here? What words are coming up most frequently? How do we, take that and summarize it, or even like look past what are they saying, what's the user saying, and trying to actually find the nugget.
Yeah, it's amazing in pulling that stuff out.
Yeah.
And when you think about what we do and what implications in healthcare of being able to connect dots that just our brains can't to kind of find solutions, that's pretty exciting, right?
I'm surprised though nobody said they're using it directly in product.
Well, kind of related to those announcements this week, like we can't really use the AI platforms unless we kind of pull it off and do like a stable diffusion, which is a platform
Independently running on your system.
But we can't use like Midjourney and these things when we have the contracts we have in place with some of the companies like Meta and everything like that. There's just no way right now. It's not secure enough, right? So I dabble with it. Like you probably see my dabbling on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can, push and pull it into what I want. And now that like VizCom where you can sketch and prompt, then that's getting a lot better. But at this point, until it can be secure and nobody else can get it, it's a problem, right?
So you're worried about sort of your own IP you make on it?
Clients, like
Client
if it's an
yeah.
internal project, we can probably play around with it.
Yeah.
But if we've signed contracts and are on the hook for
NDA.
confidentiality, we can't really use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts to be a bit risky. And we definitely use it for some of our internal projects. And one of the things we found is probably why you didn't hear anyone jump to say, like, here's how we're using it in product. I think AI, at least in my experience, has been really good at getting, to, 90% of accuracy, 90% of what you want. I think in our studio, it's the 10% that makes us good at what we do. It's those little details and just that that common thread that's pulled from the story through the experience of the product. And I found that getting that last 10% is where all the effort and time really goes when using this AI tools. And at some point, sometimes it's like, shoot, I could go back and get it there myself.
I could have made this right in the first place.
Right. So you hear a lot of designers really lean into using it early, right? Inspiration, conceptualization, really trying to get a theme going, right? And after that, it's really like, okay, let's have our team dive into this and push it a little bit further.
It's a good point too, because like if you're talking about footwear or automotive design, it's kind of been trained on that, so it's more about expression and emotion, so you're not nitpicking proportions as much and all that. On product design, and I have fooled around a lot with footwear because it's fun and it's my background, but it'll produce in product, it'll produce a bunch of stuff that's not manufacturable or it's kind of nonsense, but in all that nonsense, it might be a bad idea that triggers a good idea that you didn't think of. So when I might not be doing it specifically for client X, Y, or Z and naming it and trying, I might just be saying a topology of a product. Yeah. Give me some ideas. I want this kind of, CMF and blah, blah, blah. And it might say, oh, I was like, that's kind of interesting. And it triggers something else. It may not look anything like that, but it was something I might not have previously thought of. You know?
It's like not the inspiration, but the inspiration for the inspiration.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Inception, yeah.
We actually used it in a totally different way just this week.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because we usually did it in the beginning, but we're working on carpet design. So for hospitality, we often design our own carpets, our own patterns, proprietary. We don't want carpet tile. It's beautiful. So
no one else can have the Gensler
right. No one
carpet.
can have it, right? So we start. Let's just say we start with our own design. We do start on Pinterest often, so we want to be better than Pinterest.
Right.
And then we go into working with the manufacturer, and they create something beautiful. And then the other day, it still wasn't right. And we're looking at each other like, God, it just isn't quite there yet. So then we did work a little bit in Midjourney and then prompted it, took our designs that we had so far, and we created something really unique and different.
Right. Nice.
So while that might not be the exact outcome, it still got us closer to the finish line than we were getting on our very own with our partners.
Right, right. Yeah. No, it's impressive, especially interior architecture, what it can do with the right camera, calling out the right camera and film and grain. And like I was playing around with a aspen dispensary design interior, and I wanted aspen trees as the columns and everything. I was like, with Core 10 steel, perforated ceilings, and I was like, wow, it kind of nailed it, right? And I'm like, it kind of looked like very Aesop, but it was pretty interesting. It was, I mean, you throw that in a proposal or a presentation and blow people away, right? The lighting is just amazing.
So
The lighting is incredible now.
And I love Aesop.
Yeah, I know. I'll send you.
So you sold her.
Right.
You have a client. I mean, I assume Gensler, though, Gensler must be using sort of computational design, right, within its architectural process and things like that. And so, is it not using sort of generative-based design for, development of floor plans or other things like that? Or, in your mind, does that just sort of fall into the pre-generative computational engineering world? Does that question make sense?
Okay, so we do have programs that do help us exactly with what you're saying. Like we have this many, this much square footage, and we have this many floors, we need, this many offices, and we want them in the core, and we want to keep the windows. So we have programs right now that do work with us on this, but we actually have right now 100 people working on our own platform for AI so that we won't have the issues of not being able to share our client projects and not have that, or I guess more like the Nike black box.
Yeah.
Example you were saying. So I don't even know if Gensler people know that we have these 100 people working on it right now, but it's very exciting, and I think that it'll help marry because we're just the tip of the iceberg of where we're going to be able to go and hopefully bring those two together in the future.
Well, there's this tension, right, where you don't want to build any process that's sort of commoditizable.
Yes.
I feel like, right? As soon as you do something that a competitor could duplicate, like you sort of lose your reason to entry.
Yes. And I also, on the flip side, I'm also worried that everything is going to look just Gensler-y.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just said, it's the Nike shoe, it's the old Nike shoe, it's the new one. Like I also just don't want like a whole bunch of black and metal.
This
and cool
wasn't AI design, but the AlphaFly 3, if anybody wants to Google
it's good.
it was AI design. Like
Next time we'll all be wearing the AI design shoe.
Well, I was pretty amazed. It might have even been a year ago that I did a Flyknit. I pushed, a prompt out to Midjourney, and I did Flyknit, and I was like, wow, that thing is amazing. Like compared to all the other stuff I was doing, I was like, it just had more content to learn from, right, out there in the public space.
Right.
So I was like, that's why it nailed the Flyknit shoe.
Yeah.
What's the potential for sort of changing the experience of product? Do you see sort of a near potential for that, like a sort of true impact to the work you're doing, the refinement you're doing around that sort of core value?
Well, I mean, I can speak to sort of a back and forth process that we've used with one of our clients, and where we're collaborating with generative AI and computer learning, computer vision. So we've worked with a client, Pheno, and they launched a toothbrush on the market, a full mouth toothbrush, which has over 18,000 bristles. But anyways, the concept is we have to find a way to create a mouthpiece that works for 90+% of the population, right? And so, taking over 20,000 dental scans, but you can't sit there and analyze that one at a time, right? And so this was a process. They're very intelligent people, much smarter than me, that can analyze this data, create programs that can read it and understand. And then I was brought into like, okay, let's actually design the mouthpiece so that our program can use that as its premise and then scale it accordingly to come up with, a set few sizes for, a large population, not 100%, but a large population. And so that was an instance where you have a design team coming in to, even educate the rest of the team on, here's what we're doing with surfacing, with the 3D modeling, with the design. And then, so we're training and teaching the model on how to, interpret that and regenerate it, but now in flexible sizes. And then they can spit these out very quickly. And with the model they're using, it's with a little bit of cleanup ready for manufacturing, or ready to be sent off to the manufacturer. So, yeah. So I see more of that type of thing, happening as means of really solving complex processes, not so much design necessarily. I mean, we can design one mouthpiece very easily, but when it comes to, how do we capture, tens of thousands of data and be able to generate pretty quickly.
To actually scale an idea, right? Scale sort of an engineering-based idea
right.
into manufacturable design.
Right, and ultimately it would be, send in your scan, get a very personalized, mouthpiece to you, that type of thing. But right now, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, it was like we'll look back in a year from now and we'll laugh at what we're talking about up here, right? So it's like it moves so fast. Like even just last week, I felt like I fell behind. But no, I think the inputs is still where it's at for me. And of course, like, if I can do more by offloading, like I've designed this product around maybe input from research, a broader audience of research and data points. I've designed this, and now I don't have to spend the time getting the rendering. I can send the CAD model data and say, here's a reference photo or a reference shot that I wanted in this style. I can offload that to that, so the designers can spend more time doing the more meaningful side of design. Then that's interesting. I don't, for visualizers, that might be a job threat, but I think it's pretty interesting there. And I'm like, I've always wanted to learn. I just never have time to learn Grasshopper and Python and all this stuff. So now I'm actually asking AI to teach me Python to do simple things. Like I got a 3D printer for Isabel and my other daughter at home now, and like I'm doing vases and things like that, just learning how to do generative design. And eventually, as I learn more and more about Python, and then Grasshopper, you can put all kinds of data into. And maybe it starts to learn and like get to a point where those inputs can understand that you don't have 6 fingers and do different things. And so yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic, and I think there is a sentiment, like there are designers that are nervous about it, just like there were designers when I was at IIDA in the 90s that were nervous about CAD, and they're no longer designers, but it's like, so yeah, I mean, I think you just got to embrace it and find your tool set, right?
Yeah, I think still my favorite quote is that people who use AI aren't the people that are going to be, put out of business. The people that don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if we just completely ignore it and put our head in the sand, those are the designers. You got to keep iterating, keep growing. I mean, I was telling my daughter, actually, I learned about AI from my daughter to begin with, because she did it in school, so I'm already a dinosaur. And then just today, I was like, do you still use AI? She's like, yeah, I was just chatting with it. I'm like, what? What is happening? I'm again behind.
Like AI is my real mom now.
I know, right? Too far.
Sorry, too blood.
I do feel I was talking about it pretty early. Even though the first image was of my golden retriever, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good.
Right.
And then I had a really good friend of mine who's Lucha Plan and a very good designer out of Argentina, and he was like, he immediately started training an off-the-grid, like stable diffusion thing. He did the Hope light with all the, the Hope chandelier with all the Carl Zeiss lenses. He's a great designer. He's kind of an engineer, but he immediately saw the opportunity and jumped in. So I think everybody in this audience is probably okay, because you have to wonder before you explore and discover. So you're wondering, so you're ahead of the game. I think people that are in denial are, it's gonna be probably the biggest transformative thing to our industry in a long time, right? Maybe ever. We'll see.
I mean, 6 months ago. So let's say the timeline is, Dall-E hits, ChatGPT hits, everybody freaks out, right? Massive freak out in every industry. Then we see sort of the next 6 months like, oh, it's a little disappointing. Oh, things get better, things get worse. I do feel like, though, a lot of the mentality of people I've talked to, designers and otherwise, basically agree with you. Like, it's sort of here, we're going to master it, it's a new tool. Until about like a week or two ago, right? And so a week or two ago, for people who haven't sort of followed all of the news cycles, Instagram recently like tossed some new terms and conditions everyone's way, where all of a sudden they're like, hey, we may be training AI on all the stuff you post, which is like, you can request to opt out or something like that too. Was
small print.
Small print and very hidden button, and. Obviously for artists and designers, that's a real challenge, right? Because you feel like you are sort of, this is a necessary sort of promotional tool for everyone, right? And a real like source of community for people. And so like that disappears, that's sort of suddenly weaponized against you, it's scary. Then, to follow it up, Adobe releases new terms and conditions where they say essentially if you're using our products in the cloud, we may see everything you're doing. And so, I don't exactly know if they are directly implying they might train AI or anything like that, but even if they didn't, it's a real challenge to confidentiality, to Scott's earlier point, right? That you are working on things for companies. Every company is working on confidential things in Photoshop somewhere, right? So I feel like things got a lot worse, really fast. But what's been surprising to me is seeing like a sort of mass protest on Instagram. I don't know how much it matters, but it's happening. Seeing sort of a mass protest of Adobe all of a sudden. I don't know if it matters, but it's happening. Have your spirit shifted because of this? Like, or are you still, very, very positive?
I've always been a little bit skeptical about what it is I'm using some of these models for. And so, when it comes to storytelling, right, that can be interpreted a million different ways, right? So that type of thing ends up being, lends itself pretty well to, whether or not you're training based on that. I kind of expect that it's happening, even if they don't say it's happening.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's happening, right? But when it comes to certain projects, but like I said, it's that 10% that that's our bread and butter, that 10% of the project, really polishing it, really making it real, considering the manufacturability, which is way more than 10%, but that within the concept phase, even as early as that. And so because my early experience with it has not yielded those results, it's like, okay, we have really shifted to using it more for that visual storytelling and more of the, like, how do we, visualize the brand, right?
That does feel like it inherently lowers the stakes a little bit, right? Rather than being tied to core product.
Right.
Yeah.
And we love our storytelling. We are storytellers. I think that our approach and the way we work on a project is unique and different. And so to me, that's where the excitement is and the energy. So it doesn't bother me as much because it feels like another tool in my toolbox. And to your point, it's not that it's going out the door by just using AI, right? It's just like another piece, whether it was the Revit or the Photoshop. I mean, we just found out something in Photoshop this week that everyone else here might know. Maria, shout out to you. So she's doing, she created a rendering, it's beautiful, but it's got this ugly door in it. This gray door, we don't want it. It's got a beautiful wall. And so did you know you can lasso it? It gives you the option.
Yeah.
And it fills it in with 5 different options. And we literally saw Maria she just increased her power. It was like a Luigi in the video game, right? You just saw her power increase. So
I like you went Luigi, not Mario.
Right, I'm sorry. You're Luigi, I'm sorry.
I don't know what it means, but for you later.
Yeah, but that, just watching like a designer level up in moments was so great, and with her job, and like just seeing that live, I think still inspires me.
No, we saw the same thing with that generative fill or removal.
Right.
Just remove. And you see designers getting their time back, or they don't want to be like.
Right, that was 15
editing.
minutes.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Billable minutes, 15 billable minutes.
So
Everybody wins.
It's like, are you saying like it's a little bit of paranoia?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, Miro came out of, thank goodness, came out of, like, the pandemic, you know, it was an endless whiteboard, but, you know, the organization behind that is, you know, over one of the other superpowers, right? You know, so I'm like, oh, you know, we're putting all kinds of stuff on that board, you know, and I don't know if it's secure, but, you know, it's a little bit concerning. And then I was like, this week when I heard about the Adobe thing, I was like, I messaged two people on my team. I'm like, do we have to drop Creative Cloud now? Do we have to go to Canvas? You know, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, and they know they have you. Like, are you really going to switch out of Adobe? It's not like all this freehand and all these other options are out there. If you remember
Canva will say yes, but give them like 18 months.
Yeah. I mean, I think you start to think about, you know, there's a lot of debate about, you know, ownership rights and you know, when models are trained over artwork and design. But I guess a hot take is, you know, as designers, and Scott, you know, backstage, you were, you know, mentioning a few things about something that may have influenced your work from, you know, much longer time ago, and so as designers, we're constantly receptive to everything we see, and it shows up in our work one way or another, right? And I saw my design skills balloon over the years just because of the amount of things I've consumed, right? Things I can pull back from years ago. And so when you think about it, is AI not doing the same thing, right? So you can't blindfold me and say, hey, don't observe in NeoCon, right? Because there's a lot of beautiful, inspirational work. But so
don't check out the IP of other companies.
Right. So you know, I think that's why to me it's always kind of a given that this is happening. It's going to happen, and so yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, but you know, that's
a good point too. It makes me think like all those high fidelity bad ideas that it generates in the product, I mean, it's not really that much different than all the bad sketches that fall by the wayside, right?
Right.
It's just higher fidelity, and maybe it help you make, you know, better choices earlier. I don't know. Because some sketches always lie, right? You know, it's like eventually, you know, you get in there like, oh, that's not going to work out.
Right.
I don't know if you've followed this. Anybody in our audience has followed this idea, but I want to say maybe 5 years ago plus, there were a few pieces about like what was called the CSI effect in juries, where all of a sudden juries had watched CSI and they'd watched like DNA sequencing on somebody's beer glass, right? And all of a sudden they were like going to their local court and being like, well, why don't you have DNA sequencing on this parking ticket? And what I'm curious about is like also I think, you know, Google made us all sort of our personal doctor, and I know that drives my doctor crazy. But I'm curious, like, are you seeing a similar, if you will, CSI effect or sort of Dr. Google when it comes to, you know, generative AI with your own clients? Like, are they coming? Has it changed your expectations? Is it changing your dialogue?
Well, I've definitely had those conversations on the phone already, where it's like, you know, we're talking about a, you know, proposal, how much something costs. Oh, I can just do that in AI. I'm like, why did you call me? Why did you actually call me? Like, go do that. You know, I was like, so yeah, no, I've seen on the client side, you know, I can just do that in AI kind of attitude.
Yeah. Well, my favorite is when, you know, we've had some potential clients, you know, come up to us and say, and you know, start working with us, and actually we take on the project and we're working on design, and then they pull something out of the back pocket. You know, actually, you know, the other night I did this.
Like this.
And this is something what I'm looking at, and you know, you're sitting there trying to take it very seriously. Your eyes are watering a little bit. You're like, it's something, you know, but it's like it's not good because it's not filtered through the right lenses, right? And so because you have a tool, because you can swing a hammer, it doesn't mean you're going to build a structurally sound house, right? And we see it in product development, even in brand development, right? Like there are certain principles that you should abide by, even if you're not actually doing the work, right? And yeah, I find that you always need to have a knowledge base. Even if you're not a designer, you have to understand what the trends are, where you know structure or engineering comes into play, and just some degree of taste, right? Because as
Right.
designers, I mean, as designers, we have to curate. And I think that's one of the most valuable skills that we even look for when we're interviewing is just like, sure, you're talented, you can do a million things, but like, I just need to see 3 things instead of a million.
Right.
Which 3 do you pick? And that is such a...
They want that
valuable-
optionality. They want all these things.
Right.
They could be good at generating a bunch of filler concepts too, and check the box on it.
Yes.
Yeah, they wanted 20 concepts. Okay, we'll do 3, but then we'll let AI do 17 terrible ones.
Until they choose
But
that.
it makes me think about, like, the one thing I've noticed over the years is that you have an entrepreneur or a client that has an idea, and it can be the first rough sketch or the first CAD model. When they see their idea become real, there's a dopamine, and they like get so excited.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
this could be dangerous because they could fall in love with that thing that they feel like they created with AI, and they've got that release. And I think it was Daniel Pink, A Whole New Mind, or I don't know, there was a book a while back, maybe a decade or 2 ago, that was talking about once a person forms a belief, it's so hard to undo and that has to do with the dopamine and everything like that. So that could be a danger. It could be painful for us to try to undo that, right?
When you were talking, it reminds me of sometimes our clients say, oh, I have a cousin that's also an interior decorator. And then that's always like the alarms go off. And we've actually had 2 clients now that have come and said, we only want you to use AI because we have a week and a half turnaround. And we want you to, we want quick ideation.
They're like, take the steroids because we need this gold.
Yes, is this making everyone itch?
Yeah.
And so we actually did do one, and it was for a sports team, and we had worked with them before, and they wanted us to take some of the ideas we had from before and put it in a new location, an outdoor space, just to get their investors excited. Because really, when you're going with this large of a corporation, they are all about, does the financial, does the development, does everything else work? And we need a splash page. So in this instance, it actually worked out really well for us because it was such a brush. It was like we used to do watercolors.
Yeah.
And they weren't realistic, right? But they were beautiful. It sold an idea, a story. So that's what we used it for, and it was great. And the reason it was helpful is because it helped them get to the next level quickly, and then we could partner with them.
Right.
Yes.
Nice.
That's interesting too, yeah. We don't typically do spec work. Maybe I do a lot of spec work, but I try to get people comfortable and excited about it. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's also good for upfront spec as long as maybe you get some kind of commitment that they're going to kind of go. Maybe it's like as long as you get an upfront, we'll do this really quick, but we need a commitment that you're going to use it after
moving
that,
forward,
right? If you close the work, if you close the job or the budget, yeah.
So none of us on the stage are exactly young enough to be sort of AI natives. But Rotimi, I know you've taught quite a bit. You've taught design, like UIC, Northwestern. You worked with young students, and I'm curious, like, how you've seen them use the tools, like, how you see that curriculum changing, and sort of, what we can expect from that, like, next generation of designer.
For sure, yeah. I mean, and I think we're in the early stage, right? So universities are trying to figure out how to even pivot or embrace or discourage, like, what's our perspective on this? My perspective, and I can speak for myself, my perspective on it has been to definitely embrace and dabble, figure it because you're part of it. So. But learn the fundamentals, right? And so, as part of my, experience teaching, freshman and sophomore level, I'm usually really, pushing for fundamentals. I'm a traditionalist. I still love pen and paper. Understand that junior, senior year, use whatever you have at your disposal to figure it out. Because now you've learned, right? And there's no, don't be lazy about it. Don't just like, homework's done, that type of thing. So in the freshman, sophomore, I'm really more strict about like, what are the design fundamentals? What's the story? Are you, implementing it in the right ways? Are you prototyping? Are you being physical with it? The junior, senior, I'm encouraging. I'm like, okay, well, visualize it. Well, it's gonna take a while. Well, how do we use AI for that? So. I've definitely seen it in a lot of different ways, putting things within, putting products into context. We still, again, we still push for designing and developing the products themselves. Definitely early in the process, inspiration or just initial ideation. go nuts, use it. Later on in the process, bring it back in to contextualize the product to sell that story. Because we've seen some cringeworthy moments where, it's like, okay, great design, now let's render it and make it, beautiful. And it's like, all right, try AI, see if that helps a little bit. Because at that point, it's your design, you've done it, so like, let's figure out how to sell that so people, take it seriously and appreciate it.
Yeah. We'd like to take some questions from the audience in just a couple minutes, so think of any that are on your mind.
Could I add?
Yeah, no, add on.
So I've been interviewing, knowing this was coming up, I've been interviewing every level of designer from very senior principal to I'm a year out of school. And what was most interesting is the younger designers were all saying, we are doing this simultaneously as we're doing our design, like how we would typically do it in Rhino or SketchUp. So they're not, it's just
so designing and AI designing.
And AI. So let's say I'm looking at a design for this room and I'm concepting it. They're like, we're working on it, and then while it's rendering, I'm still in Rhino, I'm still in Revit. They're like, I am not basing my future on just one platform anymore, but I'm using multiple, which is really neat. And then they are informing each other.
Yeah. And it's kind of always been that way. Like, there's never been one platform that does everything. Like, we have to jump between SolidWorks and Rhino and Grasshopper and Blender and all these different things, and it changes, and the lead changes, and you end up piecing together the set of tools that's right for the project, right? Houdini or whatever it is, It's like there's always these obscure things too. Maybe Houdini's from entertainment, but it's great at generative stuff, right? And
it's like adaptability, real-time adaptability, essentially.
Yeah, it's a good point, because even educationally, design can be or taught in a linear way because it's easier to digest that way. But we all know, it's a very messy, it's a very zigzag process, and so to your point, like AI is just another thing to use as part of that process, right? So.
And just stay curious and don't be, embrace it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's what, I don't watch sports, and I watch YouTube videos on how to before I go to bed. That's how I fall asleep, right? I'm curious, perpetually curious about stuff and learning. I have software FOMO, right? I have software FOMO.
Same thing.
Same thing. It's iterative.
But like, think about Sora. I was thinking about that Sora video. So I was like, wow, if I can tell Sora that I need give me a video, produce a video that shows me how to do this, or a tutorial how to learn this software. That's pretty interesting. So that could also change education. It would kind of make it more accessible as well. So if you can make videos on demand around topics of a how-to or software skills, and you can level up like Mario,
Or Luigi.
But I will say one thing that I struggle with as a traditionalist is when AI should be used and not. And by that, I wear a lot of hats in our studio, a small studio. It's about 7 of us right now. And so certain times I am manager, I'm like, profitability, so AI makes a lot of sense in some areas. And then other times it's like, well, I'm a designer too, I'm a creative. And so if I have a moment to do what I've been doing since I was 12 years old, something I love so much, it's like, yeah, I know AI can do it and do it really well, but I enjoy it so much, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm looking at the other side of the coin being, okay, well, yes, we can embrace it and use it, but what happens if you go against the grain? And I think my conclusion to that is you just have to be so damn good at what you do that you're being sought after for that skill set. You're the artisan now, right? And so I think that is a really powerful thing, but it's also risky.
Do both.
Do both. For
Keep
sure.
their skills. Like, I've tried to be hands-on. I bailed out of Motorola after Nike. I bailed out of Motorola when they were trying to move me into management. Like, no, I want to stay hands-on, right? Yeah. So that's what I've been doing. But I think I like offloading it. Like, I'm using it every day. I use AI, but it's not for design. I use it for contract review and like make sure this, this, and this is in there, and this, and this aren't in there. And it kind of lists it out. And before I go to the lawyers, because it saves money, because we can't just be spending. And and the way the world is today, with some of the agendas and some of the underhandedness, it's super helpful, right? Yeah. So like contractor view, very helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great.
3 years from now, how has AI changed your practice? I'd say 5, but I think 3 is like enough. Enough for the hot takes.
In tech, 3 is a lot.
Yeah, 3 is a lot.
Wow.
That's a good question.
Because I don't know if we would have been here 3 years ago.
Right. This panel would not have existed 3 years ago, right? AI had a very different meaning, even if this is sort of on the same technological cycle. Yeah. So another panel.
Cliffhanger. There we go.
Yeah, that's a deep one.
We should see it. I mean, I'm really interested in a year from now, because as I look back at my Discord Midjourney downloads folder on my iPhone, it's like when I scroll back a year, 2 years to like it was July of a couple of years ago was the first time I used it. It's like, it's pretty amazing.
Mine's pretty cringe. Like, I don't want people to see what I.
No, I mean, it's pretty amazing
it's like
how.
Private.
It's like
Instagram
it's
private account.
like college drinking pictures on Facebook are not a big deal. I don't want you to see my I don't want you to see my Dall-E.
I'm hoping that Revit has not moved us forward quick enough, or it's progressed, but it hasn't really gotten there. So I'm hoping that there will be some instance of pulling the two together that helps us really generate, but also smart. And then in the end, right, so that we can work with our contractors, with our producers, with our mill workers in a very like a faster visual way.
But actually have control. Right?
But actually have control of it.
Like the UX of AI.
Right.
Really
I think that's. I would be so happy.
The integration of all those pieces.
Right.
Like a Uber EA project manager GC. Yeah. No, I mean I am saving time on certain proposals. Whereas here's a client brief. It could be pretty light or it could be pretty detailed, and then here's our typical process. I might tweak it a little bit because every project's a little bit different. Here are the phases. Now, here's an old proposal, like 3 documents, fuse this together, give me a draft, right? And then I'll go in, because we have to make every project bespoke a little bit. But it saves a lot of time, a lot of time.
For sure.
I've done proposals in 15 minutes that normally would take me 2-3 days.
We need more project managers.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I feel so unproductive right
now.
I
know.
Yeah.
Well, we have a big archive of proposals that, if you have that recall, you can remember which project that was closest to, and then you can fuse them, and
That's great.
Would anyone like to ask a question to our panelists? Oh, over there. Do we have a stick? Yeah, we will be coming by with a mic.
Hi, this is a question for Lori. So you mentioned that your team member who is English as a second language had a great help from AI. So as me, English is my second language. I would love to hear a little bit more detail how they use AI to
bring her up here.
The design. Thank you.
Well, okay, I could give the example. So we always start with a brand narrative, right? So we like to tell a story. So it starts with a very key sentence that you could just frame everything. It's like your catchphrase, right? And then from there, we go deeper into what that concept is. And we try to pull from the community or your culture or who you are. This is like the brain moment. And of course, because we're designers, we always do 2 or 3 concepts, right? We just can't help ourselves. And so when we're trying to differentiate those 3, and English maybe isn't your first language, it sounds, it's harder, right? I see the difficulty. I see she'll say, this word in German means this, but it doesn't mean the same thing. But I watched her create a very beautiful statement and then follow it up with some just phrases. Now, we still went back, curated it even further, like you were saying, it's our brain trust. But even just those 2 moments to set up the rest of the project, because then she went into her own visual currency, which is design and beauty, right? She's able to sell that all day long because that's a universal, it's like math, it's our universal language. But just by her setting up the story with 2 slides for each of her concepts, changed everything. And the client completely understood it. And it's for a bathhouse, and it's beautiful.
Over here in front.
I have two questions. One related to what do you think AI can come up with the new aesthetics? Like, for example, with you mentioned AutoCAD, with the introduction of AutoCAD and all of the softwares. We saw neo-modern, and we saw all of these fantastic designers coming with, I don't know, deconstructivism or new aesthetics. How can you think this can change the aesthetics? And my second question related to AI and copyright, because this is the main concern. So, for example, with Dall-E, a lot of artists were like against it because they said, you know, they're taking all of this data from art, you know, and also with academia, ChatGPT, like you never know if they're true or not, if this is their sentence or this is their paper or not, you know. So these are my two questions: aesthetics and copyright.
Aesthetics, I definitely think you'll see new styles and directions. Because when you think about the convergence of AI with additive manufacturing, at least in product and construction, it'll be doing stuff that we probably can't even think of. So it's going to be our job to kind of corral it and, you know, kind of guide it probably.
I mean, even
And
now,
then
like
probably discover new
advanced
things you never-
engineering,
Yeah,
right? Like there are all sorts of parts being used in like
Yeah.
3D printing for car manufacture,
Yeah,
right?
lighter, stronger,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
less material. Yeah.
It's a boring way to think about new aesthetics, but I guess.
But no, I mean, but yeah, be, you know, I guess performance, expressed performance, right? You know, there will be there will be definitely some styles coming out. As far as IP, I think, you know, I was thinking a couple of years ago when this was starting and there was blockchain, NFTs, I was like, NFTs. But I was like, but if you could actually, and you know, we go through quite a bit of IP problems with clients and, you know, theft and, you know, people knocking stuff off. But, you know, if there was a way, and then there was a lot of people that were sensitive about the iterative, derivative stuff, borrowing people's styles and just putting in, like I thought blockchain could have, if somebody had the forethought to architect this all together, that blockchain, and that could have maybe secured these rights so that if, you know, give me this in the style of Rotimi, oh, you get a royalty on everything that they get, you know, they make. Like that would be awesome, right? But they didn't set it up like that.
Yeah, Sam Altman did not set it up like that.
No. That would have been ideal because that would have been on secure blockchain, right? Your name would have been on that ledger, but it didn't set it. Unfortunately, we didn't have a designer set it up.
But I also think that there has to be some responsibility on the designers as well. Like it's one thing to dabble and play around, which I think these tools are, yeah, definitely have fun. But once it starts to enter into sort of a commercial space, we have to filter as designers. So even when we're using our prompts, hey, make this in this style, we still have to iterate from there so that that style isn't just a copy and paste, right? That it still is pushed further. Because again, as designers, we do that a lot, right? Let's pull inspiration from this thing. And I think we have to be more interested and more willing to go back to the source, right? There's a source of inspiration that this famous designer pulled from. It might have been nature, it might have been some phenomenon, right? And we then start pulling from that designer as if they were the source. And that's where it becomes painfully obvious what's happening, right? So if we can bypass and understand, no, it's not this designer I'm inspired by what they were inspired by, and really try to go back. The thought,
yes.
right? And I think that's the importance of, you know, design education. I think once you understand that sort of thread, it can help, you know, you to create more ownable things. Right?
And speaking of ownable, this is my one worry is that now it's becoming a style, like a Midjourney style, right? Remember when laser cutting became a thing and everyone had like the bracelets, and then you could see, oh, that's all the laser cut style. So like that's my only thought as we use this. It's just another tool to create your own place or space or product, right? But that's not just the style. Yeah.
No, hopefully, like you say, they take it somewhere else. Because if you think about art, design, you learn from the masters, you copy the masters, and then you come up with your own style, right? So hopefully that's the progress.
That's a lovely thought. And we are out of time with that, so we will pin it there. Lori, Rotimi, Scott, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts, and thank you to everyone for being such a wonderful, engaged audience.